come make my very first enamel pin display hoop with me. For those of you that don't know, I am a very avid enamel pin collector and have been for about a little over 4 years as of March of this year. I discovered the wild, wonderful, wacky world of Sailor Moon enamel pins back in 2018 through Instagram, and I've just kinda been here ever since. And as you can see, I have a pretty extensive collection that no longer just involves Sailor Moon anymore. And I have some of those pins spread out across not 1, not 2, but 3 different Ida bags as well, including a Sailor Jupiter one, this Revolutionary Girl Utena one, and a Labyrinth Ida bag. This is the first one I ever DIY'd. But recently on Instagram, I've been seeing people put their pins on these displays that they made out of wooden embroidery hoops and fabric, so I decided to give it a try for myself. And I stumbled across this beautiful scrap fabric in my granny's massive fabric hoard, and I thought it would be perfect for a Yuri on Ice pin hoop. The gradient is just made of the perfect colors, and the subtle white lines remind me of the lines that skates make on the ice. But without further ado, let's get started. I used a wooden embroidery hoop so that I could paint it easier, and I'm going to be painting it with a coat of matte white acrylic paint first. And in case you were wondering, no, I didn't have to sand it in order to get the paint to stick, so if you try this for yourself, don't worry about sanding it. You don't have to. I'm also only doing 1 coat of this paint because I'm going to be going over it with a coat of a different paint in a minute. And once that coat of paint was all dry, I went over it again with some pearl white acrylic paint, for I am nothing if not extra. And then I found out that this bottle was actually empty, so I went into my paint stash and got out this other pearl white acrylic paint. And I also got this really nice shot of it on the paintbrush. Just look at how shiny that is. Does that look like a forbidden snack to you? And here while I'm painting it, you can see the difference that the pearl paint makes. I think it definitely gives it a bit of dimension. Also, I apologize if I sound funny to anybody in the audio. My allergies are not having it today at the time I'm recording this voiceover. But, you know, the show must go on. After the pearl paint layer was dry, I went over the entire hoop with this glaze to make sure that the paint didn't chip off. And this stuff took longer to dry than both of the paint layers because it's water-based. But the end result was very much worth it. But once it is finally dry, it's time to put everything together. We're going to take the inner ring of the hoop and put quilt batting over top of it. I think you can use felt for this, but I haven't tested that yet. But you're more than welcome to try. And over top of that, we're going to be placing our fabric. Make sure it's positioned over the hoop the way you want it and that it's nice and flat. And now we're going to take our outer hoop and we're going to push it down around over top of our layers. If you're having trouble with this part, you can always loosen the screw that the outer hoop has and then tighten it back up once you're able to fit it over everything. And you can also pull on the fabric a little bit too in order to get rid of any wrinkles in the fabric. And then make sure to thump the fabric to test its tautness. And this is what it'll look like on the back, but not for long. Because we're going to clean it up a little, first by cutting away a little bit of the excess, but not all of it, so it's just a little bit cleaner. And now, we're going to sew the rest of it to the back of the hoop. You're going to baste stitch all the way around the hoop. But this is where I'm going to tell you to not do what I'm doing on the screen, which is using regular sewing thread for this. Get you some embroidery floss. It is a lot stronger. I am lucky that this thread did not snap on me when I had to pull it. And speaking of pulling, once you've sewn all the way around your hoop, you're going to pull on the thread and the fabric is going to scrunch in on itself like what happens when you pull the string on a drawstring purse. but the fabric won't pull in all the way. So that's why we're gonna bust out our handy dandy hot glue gun. Because now we're gonna glue the edges down to the hoop. You're just gonna pull up the fabric, put some glue onto the hoop itself, and then press down until it stays down. And once I was done with that, I took some scissors and cut away a little bit more of the excess fabric. You don't have to do this, but I did just so it looks a little bit cleaner. And this is what the end result of that looks like. Much cleaner. Now let's turn it over to see how it looks. Oh wow. That looks amazing. Now this is where I've seen most people stop, but you guys should know by now, I'm far too extra for my own good, so I'm gonna decorate it. Specifically with my old friend from high school, Deco Den, and some rhinestones. Now if you don't know what Deco Den is, it's basically putting silicone frosting on something to make it look like a cake. It's really popular with phone cases. Anyway, I'm taking this 100% clear silicone and pouring it into a bucket, and then mixing some more pearl white paint in with the silicone. And of course, some glitter! Because is it really a Yuri on Ice themed thing if it doesn't sparkle a little bit? I don't think so. And then I'm mixing it with a wooden popsicle stick until it's all nice and combined. After it was all mixed, I put it inside of a Ziploc bag and pushed it all the way to one corner with something sturdy and flat. I used a used $10 Dairy Queen gift card, but you can use whatever card you have on hand. And then I got another Ziploc bag and I cut the tip off of one of the corners, because that is the bag we're going to be putting our piping tip through. And to make it stay in place, I secured it with some duct tape. It didn't work very well, but it's what I had on hand. And then I cut the tip off of the bag with the frosting in it, and I put that bag inside of the bag with the piping tip in it, and now we're good to go. And then I made sure to do one random dollop to eliminate any air bubbles before moving on to my actual project. And now we get to the fun stuff. I am going over the entire hoop, piping this silicone frosting on dollop by dollop. Now what you're seeing is an incredibly sped up process, because this took me like a good hour and a half, 2 hours. Because due to the consistency of silicone, it is 10 times harder to pipe than any kind of regular thick consistency frosting. Like right here, I slowed down the footage so that you guys could see how slow I was actually going. You can actually see my hand shake a little bit when I squeeze the bag. But I still had a fun time doing it, of course, because I'm a baker and I love cake decorating, so this is kind of like me decorating a cake, just with super thick frosting. And while the silicone is still wet, we're gonna take our little plastic rhinestones and put them on in between the dollops of the frosting. Now I first started doing this with my jewelry pliers, and that worked for about 5 seconds. And then the rhinestones just kept falling out of the grip of the pliers. So then I started doing it with my needle nose pliers. Same thing happened, so I just said, you know what, fuck it, I'm just gonna use my fingers. And then just booped the rhinestones into place with the back end of a paintbrush. Which ended up working splendidly. As you can see, that's the method I used for the rest of the hoop. And then once you've given the silicone a good 24 to 48 hours to dry, depending on the weather, it should look something like this. Look how gorgeous that came out. And now we're gonna go looking around the frosting for any bits that are sticking up where they're not supposed to be, and taking these tiny scissors and cutting them off. Like you see this little guy right here sticking out, I'm just gonna take my scissors and snip it off. Boom, much better. And I just kept doing this until I was happy with the look. And now it's finally time to put the pins onto the hoop, aka the only 3 Yuri on Ice pins I currently have. First off, we have this beautiful pin of young Victor by the Painted Doodles on Instagram. And this adorable pin of Yuri and Victor eloping in front of La Sagrada Familia in Barcelona, also by the Painted Doodles. And finally, this beautiful pin of 2 matching ice skates inspired by Yuri and Victor's pair skate costumes by Rad Jinja on Instagram. So you're just gonna take your pin and you're gonna push it down, stick it through the fabric until the pin posts come out on the other side on the back, and then place whatever closure your pin came with on top of the pin post. Oh, and I filmed this bit before I put that pin onto the hoop, but that pin has cute little heart-shaped rubber backers, and I just think that's so precious. I love it when enamel pins have uniquely shaped rubber pin backs. It's the coolest thing ever. And now for the final reveal. And of course, I can't forget the detail shots. And yes, I did do a full-scale photo shoot for this thing, okay? I'm very proud of it. And even though I couldn't capture the pearlescence of the frosting on camera, I know it's there, so, you know, I still win. And here you can see a teeny bit of the glitter I mixed in there peeking out. And I also had a lot of fun figuring out which pins I wanted to place in what order. But ultimately, I love the order that I ended up going with, because it tells the story of Yuri on Ice. We have young Victor at the top, very successful in his career, but also very lonely, and then he meets Yuri and his life changes, and then we see them at the end of the anime skating together on the same ice in their beautiful pair skate costumes. And all these pins, where they're placed, match the color gradient, which is a complete coincidence that I did not plan for, I swear. And now to put this bad boy up on my wall. And as you can see on this wall in particular, there is very little space for end, but I made it work anyway. Now you could glue some yarn onto the back of it and hang it like a picture frame, but I didn't feel like doing that. And you don't really have to, because I found that you can just, you know, hang it on the wall via a push pin and it'll work just fine. There. Perfect. I hope you guys enjoyed this, because I had a lot of fun doing it. And I hope you guys try this out for yourselves too, and get creative and have fun with it. Also, I don't know if this counts as a self-promotion, but I have an entire Instagram account dedicated to showing off my enamel pin collection. So, if you guys want to go follow that, here it is. And with that, I'll see you guys next level.